Hey, in this video, we will be using the Airtable interface and we will build something completely from scratch. First of all, we have to understand for what the interface is. When we compare the interface to the database of Airtable, we have all the data in the database, and the interface is like a front end, which simplifies every working environment in a way that you can really customize everything with more granular detail. That means you can, for example, open something and design it the way you would visualize your data. This has a lot of advantages. For example, when you're working with someone never worked with Airtable before, you can literally just give them the view that are just for them. Meaning, if you have a database with extensive data, we can look at this database here. And on this database, we have a lot of different fields. That would be quite overwhelming for someone who has never used Airtable before. But with the interface, we have the ability here really to customize not only the view, but also build sections and reuse specific components over and over again. For this example, we will rebuild our prompt database. This prompt database has been amazing because we can have all the prompts in one database, but also it's super easy to change the model. For example, if we want to apply any other model, we can just change it. And we do not need to change it in any other automation because it is already here inside. The ability to connect data is also so much easier. Let's just go and show you one example here. In this example, we have connected this prompt. We can see the outcome here. Like those are maybe the images that the prompt has been rendered or that the prompt has delivered. But we can actually also click on it and see, let me just do the preview here, and can see right away how the prompt has been creating those images here. As we can see, we can click on the related record here, but we can also see that this is looking quite ugly because we have just changed our source. We have to redesign this here completely, and that's something we are doing today. But this is really powerful because we are able really to connect, for example, each image with the dedicated exact prompt here. We can go and check the image. We can see the relationships if we want to open more and we want maybe to see to what story does it belong. We can relate it to the image model. For example, if we have any flux or any specific model we want to use, we can see the prompt, we can see the inspiration maybe where it's coming from. That's the most powerful thing, that we can really design the record the way we want. Let's start with the options here. As I said, we want to rebuild this here. The reason is we have moved the table and we did some customization, some certain things we would like to change. Therefore, this is a perfect time to showcase how we can rebuild the same structure here, but using another table. In order to create a new view, we can switch here between preview and build mode. When we are in build mode, we can then create interfaces. Inside those interfaces, we have different views. The great thing about the view is you can include multiple sources within one view. And that's quite amazing because in the database itself, you have to stick to one database and you can just create linked records, but you cannot really visualize, besides lookup fields, your items. Here we can choose between a list view, then the gallery view, Kanban, calendar, and many more. There is, of course, this option here with starting from a blank canvas, which gives you the most flexibility. But I would suggest if you are doing it the first time, the most useful view is definitely the list view or the gallery view. And if you have any calendar mode, for example, for social media posts, or if you need the calendar, that's also helpful. But we will stick for now with the list view here. Once you create the list view, you just need to select the table, where is the data source coming from. And here inside, you can then select, for example, your external automations. That's where all our prompts are coming from. Okay, once created, you can decide how it should look like. Of course, you can always ask the AI to build it for you. There is this option at the top corner here where you can ask the AI to build the view for you. But in most cases, I would not recommend that, especially if you have already something clear in mind here. We have here our view. This is the grand overview of all our views. And we can close this for now here. And also we can close the pages as we can work here and have more space here. That's the only view we want. The first thing, of course, is we have to make sure that we understand what we want in this view here. Okay, in our case, what we want to display are only text prompts, only automations where a text prompt is included. For that, we want to filter it based on the main category. So we can set the filter here and decide we just want everything that includes text completion here. Okay, we have here all our prompts. And what we want also is we want to change the name, because while those numbers are super helpful for automations, they're not really looking nice. What we want then is to deselect or select the fields we would like to see. For that, we need to click inside this table here or this list. When we click on it, we can see on the right side, we have other options. We can make it bigger or smaller. We can change the fields that are visible here. What we want is to disable our name field here, and we just keep the title. We keep the category. We do not want the details. And here we can then select maybe everything that we are interested in. Again, this depends on your data, of course. In our case, let's also include the prompt category. And now what we want is also the model we are using, so that we have here a grand overview, like what model we are using here, OpenAI or maybe any Anthropic model, Qwen, whatsoever here. That's fine for now. And now what we want is maybe to make it a little bit more pleasing for the eye, is to group this here based on what the prompt is doing. We group this here by the prompt category. And here we go. Now this is looking already quite good. We have here options. And one great thing also about creating your view here inside is you can dictate what you want to give the user. For example, you can include elements here. So that would be tabs, like every active prompt could be here. And we could maybe create a tab that includes every prompt. For that, we can just create a filter here, and let's just include maybe status here. We can then select only every prompt that is in use. Okay, and here we can just change the name, and now we have here our active prompts and here all records. And of course, we can also change the viewing order here. We can make all records at the front and active prompt maybe behind, or you can decide however you like to do it. The other great thing is also we can either share this list here and they can have a grand overview, or we allow them, so any user here, to also open those records here. And that's like, again, where the power is, because now we can not only change here the view, but when we do changes here, for example, let's do one change so that we see right away what's happening. When we include a background color here, we set the background color, we see we have the background color. Again, this is still ugly, but when we go now to the other view, and when we open now this example here, we see we have also the same background color. Why? Because we are working on the same view. So this is really amazing. We can really work with one data set, but have multiple views which we can share across. And if we, for example, want to have for this specific interface a separate view, we can actually change here the source or the source of the view. When we have this option here, we can decide either we want to create a new layout or we keep it and we can see this view here has been used on 3 items already. Okay, let's move on. What we want is, of course, a nice looking design. The way I always suggest to build it is build like separate sections. What I mean with that is like you have the ability to use groups here. Think about this, that you want to categorize in subgroups your view. For example, you could put every important detail at the very top, and then everything that might not be useful in the everyday use, you want to put them down below. But again, you have to understand for what you are building your interface. It must make also sense. In most cases, this side view here is helpful. But in this case where we are working with long prompts, we want maybe a bigger view. For that, we can change also the size here itself. All we need to do is just change it here from side view into large view. Again, this here might not be helpful in most cases, but when we are working with large prompts, large text, this is actually a super helpful view. What we want maybe at the top again are the key informations, and then at the bottom is the prompt so that we can also test the prompt, we can write comments and maybe improve the prompt over time. Let's just call this here the prompt section. And here inside, we can now add those fields. So for example, the prompt are always structured here in the role, tasks, example, output, and outcome. Let's include all those fields here inside. Now, of course, here we want also that the users are able to change the prompt. Now, what we want here is to make sure that the section here is also visible as a section. So we can select here the entire group and give it a background color. We can already see we have separated this view into 2 subsections. It will make it really simple to understand or to structurize your data. The next thing is to give the user also the ability to change everything that is inside here. Then what we want here is to give the user the ability to change every field here into an editable field. We just change it from view only to editable. And now we have it here, role, let's change this one here, role, task, example, output, and outcome. Okay, here we go. Now it's looking good. Let's change just the order here. And now this is already good. Okay. This view here is also a view where we might just test the prompt. Maybe we do not have the prompt yet connected into our workflow. Therefore, we need a field where we have the input and then, of course, the output itself. So let's just call this group maybe testing prompt. And now what we want to include here are 2 fields. Again, same thing. But this time we just put the input and we have the output. The difference between outcome and output is in outcome, we just describe how the prompt, like what we want as the output. For example, a specific format or a specific style. So besides the entire prompt, we have the input that will be sent through to the provider. And based on the input with the prompt together, we receive an output. And that's the difference here. So let's make those fields also editable, but in our case, we want the output here to not be editable because it wouldn't make sense, because this is just for testing. In our case, we just put the input here and change it to view only to editable. We can include anything we want or just write comments on how to improve this one so that we can work on the prompt itself. Great. Let's just also include a background color here. Okay, this is looking good. Let's change the top section here. And what we want is to make this a little bit more visually appealing here. We do not need this view to be big, so we can just use this one. And now we just arrange it in the way we like. Let's just do some minor adjustments here. What we want is, of course, everything. Let's just set everything to editable first. And now let's arrange that. We can keep the title. We can also squeeze everything together. What we want maybe here is the model itself. And we want also, of course, the provider. We want every maybe category that we can change here, like the category itself. Is it in use? Where is it in use? And maybe also the prompt category. Great, we have the description. We can delete this one here. And in this case, we do not need the details. I'll explain later for what this field is. So now this is looking great already. We have now everything that is important. So we can maybe also give this one a name here, prompt information. But now what we want is also to hide everything if we do not need this one here. For example, we can do that in several ways. So the first, and that's probably the easiest, is just to select a group and change the visibility here and give it a rule. So we can apply any filter, but in our case, we have buttons. So we can just select the button here and show, for example, show the prompt. And we have other buttons, show the test results and show details, but let's just keep that for now out. What we can do now is we can give this here a simple rule. Do not be visible if this here is not selected. So what we want to do is like show prompt is so this is only visible if this is on OK. And the same applies down here. Let's just apply a simple filter. This is only visible if show testing is on. Okay. Now let's check how this would look like if a user would see it. When we press on preview, we can see we have a clean view. We can change the model. For example, we want maybe a cheaper model. We can choose GPT-4o Mini or whatever, Claude 3.7. We can change the provider or maybe change another API key. So that would be quite easy. But not only that, we have also the ability, of course, to show the prompt. We can change now the prompt directly here. Also show testing if we want just to test it. How is the output performing? Okay, this is great. Let's check. And again, we go back to this view here. And now let's maybe check this prompt, how it's looking. And as we can see, the same view has been applied. And that's absolutely amazing because now we can also showcase the prompt here. In this case, this is a more extensive prompt. As we can see, it's a really extensive prompt here. And when we are now showing the test, we can technically also see the results it gave. Let's go back to our old view here and let's just showcase how it was looking like before when we have the prompt and when we tested something. We could see we have here an input and this here was the output we receive based from this prompt. Now, of course, we can see here with one view, like where did we tested already the prompt and what was the result here. Also, we can see and apply a comment, which is also great here because on the side, we can really test the prompt and store every result we got and just leave a comment, maybe like first trial with this prompt and second trial. And again, why this is so powerful is like sometimes you want really to be connected with the prompt as close as possible. So for example, if you work with a lot of different images and you do not want to switch like your application and go to make.com or N8N, you want to go to your image here and you want really to have the information here so that when you click on this, you have the information directly attached to this image. So now we can change here this view. We have the prompt here to give us an enhanced image prompt. But because we have changed our table, all we need to do now is go here to this little option and change the layout to our new record details table. To make it also simpler, we can of course rename it, and let's just call it prompt details. Okay, and now when we select this one, here we go. We are back to our prompt details view. Again, let's just open this image here and let's attach a prompt. Okay, and now we have the prompt and it's ready to use. Again, I think for someone who has never used like the interface view before, this really doesn't sound like a big advantage. But keep in mind, sometimes someone who's writing the prompt is not always the person who's using it on the daily basis. For example, I have set up this entire database, but the editors who are working every day on maybe this interface, they are the one using the prompt. Now, they can give you a request like, hey, Theo, could you please change the prompt? Make sure that you include this also. They can write it to me. I can open like my automation tool. And now imagine they are not the only one, but we have like maybe a social media manager and other people who have sending all those requests. Can you change the model? I have now this request. My whole day would just be updating those prompts. But now when I give them the ability here to just click on it and change it on themselves, now they can change the model here, and all they need to do is select this one, change the prompt directly, and that's completely attached to the image itself. That's actually something super useful. It saves a lot of time. And not only that, but we can also change like the image models and everything inside here. Okay, let's go back into the creation and let's just explain some other basic things here, why the interface makes a lot of sense. Now, we have one thing which is also absolutely great, and that's like something where we can add buttons. But in order to understand for what the buttons are, we need really to understand, again, like the principle between what the record is here and the entire table view. So for example, if we add a button, we have other options in this view than if we open the record itself. So we can add a button here, and let's just see what options we have. As we can see, we don't really have a lot of options. So we can go to another interface page, we can open maybe a URL, or open a record through a form. That's it. It's not a lot. Let's delete this one here. But when we open here, this view, the details view, we have way more options. So here inside, when we add a button and now click on the button, we have really way more options. We can trigger on automation, we can change the status, we can apply or delete records. We can, again, run any automation or go to a specific page. Why? Because we are working now on the record itself. So for example, if we want to add something or we want to change the status, we can apply it really to this specific record. So that's like the buttons. Now let's recreate this view here where we run all our media automations like transcripts or image or video generation or maybe voiceover generation. But this time, let's maybe change the view here. We add a page, but this time maybe we want to add the gallery view or maybe the record view. Again, every view has pros and cons. It really depends on how you prefer it. Let's just add a gallery view here and select the same table. So here we have the same table, And now let's just make sure that the view also makes sense. The first thing is, let's just give it a good name. This one here was our prompt or let's just make it even more clear, text prompt. And here we have maybe our media. Let's just call it new for now. So otherwise we have the name twice. The first thing, of course, it would make a lot of sense if we include any images in the gallery view, since this prompts or those automations, they really don't have any images. Let's just make another switch here. Instead of using this view, I would like to change the view. Let's just say we spent already some time. That would be no problem because we can just go here into the visualization itself and now switch between those different views here. So I could switch to a list view, which maybe still makes more sense. In order to keep it simple, let's just really go back with the list view, because again, like, unfortunately for this, it really makes also more sense. Let's just do the same thing. What we want here again is to change the fields. Let's just deselect this one and deselect this one. And what we want here is to apply a filter. Let's just add this time everything else, so has none of text. Literally every other media automation for this specific table is now applied here. And what we want, of course, is also to group it, group by main category. And of course, we can then also do subgroups here, but let's just leave it like it is. What we want here is, while they are sharing the same base, we do not want the same view here. We could say, yes, take this view, or we just say, no, we want to do another view. For this one, let's just create a new view. Here we have a new view. This time the side view is fine enough. And again, let's just change the design here. Okay, so here we go. We have changed the view, as this one here requires really way less configuration, as we just need maybe the model itself. For example, for image creation, we can show more or less details as before. And here we have the details, for example, how many images, what image size. We can then attach the details field here inside. Let's just see how it would look like if we would be the user again. Let's open maybe the default model here for the image which is trained. Here inside we can see that there is no description yet, but we could technically add a description. We can change the model here, like what AI image generating model we want to use, or we can show more details and maybe change the amount of images we would like to have here. Plus, we can, of course, attach it to the API key. Now, this maybe you do not want to share with everybody. So how everything is working is that all the API credentials are in this table. This is sensitive data. So therefore, you might want to lock this data and do not share this data here. Now, the user, as a normal user, cannot open it. It depends on what permission you give, but you can also apply different permissions for different user groups. Okay, this is looking decent already. And now let's just look and discuss on what else we could do here. As I said, we have the ability to change the view. We can make this image view where we have maybe also a filter, which we can give to the editors, so they can filter it themselves. And the great thing is this filter will not be saved. That means they can filter and apply really everything on top. And when they refresh the browser, it's back to normal here. So for example, they're looking for a specific shot, they can filter it. And of course, if they have requests, like on what tabs else they would like to add, it's all here. And this is how they can see all the tabs on the left side as well here. Now let's have a look how this could look like when maybe it's already half in use or it's in use. Again, why the interface is so useful is really to integrate buttons. We can integrate button at the high level here, but then we can also integrate button at any subsection. For example, we want to enhance the prompt. Again, we have the ability now to change the status with this single click. And now the editor themselves can add anything they like here. And when they press on this button, the automation is being triggered. It's really easy. They do not have to navigate around different fields. They can just stick here on whatever they like. For example, they like this image, but maybe they want to change the framing. And now they want to enhance the prompt again. For example, the enhanced prompt is then this here, a combination based on a simple shot description and the framing, camera angles, and other options they want to include. But not only that, the power is really that they can change directly here inside not only the image model, but also the prompt enhancement. For example, you have a specific style, always in mind. Now, the editors themselves, they can really not only change it, but then they can add maybe another prompt, which they can save now, a duplicated prompt, which they can save. And instead of having this prompt attached, maybe they can also attach another prompt and use that instead. Here they can create the image, and here we have already, which is also AI generated, the camera and action section here. But as I said, we do not have to show this here because most of the time what people are interested in is really the image itself. And this is only helpful if they want to tweak specific things so that they can open it. Maybe they want to change the model here. Instead of the default model, they want maybe another Flux Ultra Pro Juggernaut or whatsoever. And once you have built a network, you can really go, click, and you can see that everything is connected with each other without overwhelming the end user. We can see that, for example, this image here has been already creating those video clips here. So we can add more videos. We can also change our default model here from maybe Kling to Runway, or you can change it however you like. We can render more. We can open this one and see, okay, how is it looking like? We can open this and we can see here the rendered video file and go back, give it a rating, see exactly again the prompt itself. We can approve it. But again, one more time, I know I have mentioned this already quite a lot, but it really makes a lot of sense that we see the output that is connected to the prompt creation and to the models, because we can then here change quite easy the model itself. Maybe another example on how and why interfaces are absolutely powerful. They can also visualize data. This is a pre-built example, which I'm not rebuilding right now, but for one of our YouTube shows, we have this dashboard here where we can really see what topic are performing how. We can see, for example, here are our outlier videos and can see for the specific channel, like this one has 1.2 million views, this one has almost 900,000, 500,000, and so on. We can then click on the video details and see also right away, for example, this video here, and we can really go deeper and deeper, and everything is connected with each other. We can see the release form, we can see what topics are performing how, and the AI really analyzes each topic, and we have a grand overview here, not only on what topic is performing, but for example, also what length. For example, we can see every video that is in the range between 45 to 60 minutes is performing actually better than videos running 35 to 45 minutes. But if it's longer than 60 minutes, the performance is dropping significantly into the bottom here. Again, this might have other factors. We cannot say, okay, every video that has this length is performing good. That's not what I'm saying, but that will make it easy really to understand the relationship And we can then go and see what videos are actually here in this section inside. Now we can click on it. We have the videos here that are related. We can close it again. We can open, for example, this view and so on. And the great thing is, again, we can build views around data, and that really in the simplest possible form. We can see, for example, what is our most performing tag for this channel again. I'm just talking about this channel here. And in this case, it's crime and justice. And then we can open every video that is related to this clip here. And we can see, okay, we have 17 videos. Those are the videos. We can see the average duration of those videos is actually just 23 minutes. And we can then click here and see more details. So we can open this video. We can see here really more details. We can see the relationships. Again, like I think you have the point. I think you understand what we can build here. Not only that it's easier for people working with this view, but we can really also integrate data. We can showcase only the data we want to showcase and hide everything else to make it as simple as possible for viewers to understand how this is working. As mentioned, we of course have also the view to really, for example, schedule possible guests for a podcast show, and which makes it absolutely easy then to integrate data with the entire different interface options we have here. So we can use the same view, for example, based on a guest. We can change the shooting date. We can send this guest an automated release form, or maybe open and extend here more. We can integrate it with activities, and we can really connect so many different sources. We can also even add dashboards here inside. Like, the options are actually limitless. Of course, there are a lot of limits, but what I'm trying to say is you can really do a lot with interfaces. Okay, so now last but not least, of course, the AI feature, which is an absolutely amazing starting point. But again, for someone who has never worked with an interface view, I would actually not recommend this feature here. The reason is that it gives you a pretty good starting point, and you have the feeling like, wow, this is maybe what I wanted in first place. But then if you don't know exactly what you want, the problem is like that what started as a good starting point is just a complete mess. Again, like, it looks great, but then you have to be super specific with what you want. So let's just try it and see what we can do here. In our database, we have a default setting. This is something I would not use, but I'm thinking to sell this whole database here as a template. And for a user never having experience or never used Airtable before, this might be a view helpful for them. So that means we have default image models or video models that they can already pre-use and select it on default on their end. All they need to do is go to this view or to the interface view and select the model that they like, and that's it. And then everything will be automatically generated, or they do not need to change it at all, because there will be always a default model. Okay, so now what we want is to create here a view, and all we need is this default setting here. We can tell this AI to create a view. And again, the more specific you are, the better. But in this case, we just have 3 fields. So there is actually nothing the AI could do wrong. But let's just see how it's working. Okay, so this is what the AI came up with. Again, I didn't give a lot of instructions, so I could also have said create a list. But as I've kept the prompt quite blank, this is what the AI came up with. But the great thing is the AI is including also those pre-select elements here that in a lot of cases are quite useful already, so that they are also filtering it for you. That saves a lot of time. So let's just change the view here. I do not like the grid view for the interface view. Let's just take the list view and select this one here. And now all we want to do, again, same thing. We want to change the visibility here. We do not need the webhook. We do not need the ID and do not need the name. All we have here is just this default setting here. Okay, we can see we have the default image generator. And if we click on the detail, again, in this case, we have not this record. By the way, I thought we have changed the name here, but it's okay. We can just change it now. But in this case, we want the record details too, so that we can see what model is it. And here we go. We can now go to this default settings here and change also the default model and maybe change it to another file AI model here so that we know, okay, this default model will be always using, for example, FluxFlow version 1.1 ultra fine-tuned as an example. Okay, this is okay for now. Yeah, I hope this video was helpful. The interface view is absolutely helpful and I would highly recommend to use it, although I'm not using it for everything. Like in some cases where we do not have people working on the database itself, but it's just maybe me, that's where I'm not using the interface view. It's mainly in order really to make it simpler for teams to have the same data structure, which you can then really configure based on also the work that the team member is doing. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions and see you on the next one.